Greetings. How are you doing today? Today I want to talk about Meniere's disease and mental health. You don't have to do a lot of formal research to figure out that Meniere's disease causes things like anxiety and depression. The thing that stinks is if you already struggle with anxiety and depression like I do, Meniere's disease can just pile onto that more and more and more. So again, you saw my disclaimer at the beginning, not a doctor, just here to share my story and some things I've learned today in hopes that it helps someone else. First thing I've learned that I could just maybe offer as some encouragement is to give yourself time to grieve and adjust after a diagnosis or a major change in your history. It's taken me about 6 months to learn how to deal with my bilateral diagnosis. Just everything from dealing with the vertigo attacks to just learning how to live life without being able to really hear music as a musician. That is still devastating. It's taken me about 6 months just to learn what my new normal is. And so I would just encourage you, give yourself space and grace to just grieve for the loss and just adjust. You're not going to figure out your new normal and your new way of living overnight. It's going to take some time and it's going to be hard and sad, and that's okay. The next thing I've figured out is my depression thrives off of isolation. This condition we have already feels isolating enough, right? We feel very weird. We have this very rare thing. It's already isolating enough. And then to know that sometimes the perfect remedy for being really symptomatic, or maybe you're having a lot of attacks, is to, stay in bed all day in a dark room. For me, I personally can't do that. For me, if I am alone in a dark room by myself, laying in bed, all I can think about is that I'm an invalid and that I am sick and that I can't function normally. That, for me, is a downward spiral that I have to avoid. And I'm not saying, by all means, if you're throwing up and you are spinning and you can't sit upright and you need to be in bed, absolutely. I'm not saying don't be safe. Look, I have a justifiable reason to tell anybody at any moment, hey, I need to stay in bed today. I just need to lay in bed and watch TV all day. I could say that. At any moment, my symptoms are pretty much invisible, and, those around me would believe me. And trust me, my depression wants me to do that because it knows that that's where it's got me. So if I can avoid it at all, I just don't stay in bed in the dark. I mean, if anything, if I'm like post-vertigo attack and I still need like a dark, quiet space, I'm at least still like sitting on the couch and I've got, my hoodie over my eyes and my sunglasses. So I'm still kind of in the world, right? So I can still see, my husband in the house and hear other things going on. And, maybe I can go check the mail. Just still feel like I'm a part of life. But even then I have to be careful, because if I sit on the couch all day, then I feel like, oh, this disease is winning. It's, it's taken over everything and I feel so powerless. So I have to be careful about that too. Listen, at the end of the day, we're the only ones that really know how far we can push ourselves. And I have to always hold myself accountable that, 90% of the time I'm probably even physically capable of doing more than I think I am. Even if there are mornings that all I can do is get up and get dressed and, get in here and stare at my computer and do something, at least I'm trying. At least I'm showing this disease that it doesn't have control over me and it's not going to keep me down in that pit of despair. And unfortunately, at the end of the day, you're the only one that can make that decision for yourself. Other thing I've learned with mental health in this is I have to be really careful about research. And when I say research, what I really mean is Googling for hours and hours and hours about Meniere's disease. I would say 90% of the time that when I do that, 90% of the time I end up either anxious or even more depressed after I do that. Now, I certainly understand if you're about to undergo a procedure or an injection, of course you want to read about it and be prepared for it. And when I was first diagnosed, the internet was really helpful for me to understand a lot of things about what's going on. But I know when I've gone too far down the Google holes. I've just decided to save my energy to make peace with my situation. I try to study my own symptoms more than the internet. Comparing myself to other people is also frustrating as far as trying to figure out what to do. So I just have to be careful about research. Next big thing I've learned when it comes to mental health is I have to be really careful about flooding my loved ones when I'm having a really bad day. This one's more about like, what do I do when I'm having a really bad mental health day, and how do I protect those around me? I'm trying to remember, living with someone who has a chronic illness, that is really stressful. My husband is amazing. He's an amazing support system, but I have to be careful that if I'm having a really bad day, that I'm not constantly flooding him all day with just this venting of anxiety or fear. It's usually what it ends up being for me. We've had a couple of bad days where I have just flooded him too much, and we've learned together the things that we have to do to really protect our relationship. And one of the things I try to do is, if I feel like I need to talk about it, I just ask him for a bandwidth check. If he's stressed or tired, or it's at the end of the day and he's not in a good place to hear it, I don't want to push that even further. And even though he stresses to me all the time, hey, I want you to be able to talk to me. I want to know how you're feeling, but there's just that balance there. So the other thing I realize is I have other things I can turn to other than just that one vent. For example, I have a therapist I talk to every week. I would highly encourage you, check your insurance plan. A lot of therapists will work on a sliding scale to something that you can afford. There's certainly all kinds of online things apparently that are out there for just talk therapy. For me, I love that I can pay someone every week and just let it fly. That is really, really valuable to me. And honestly, I do that for myself, and I do that for my partner, so that my partner doesn't feel like he's always getting the brunt of everything. Also, just things like journaling. I have a couple of notebooks where if I'm having really bad days, I have a worry journal and I have a gratitude journal. And those are good things to go to. Things like hobbies too, right? Taking a walk. There are other things that we can do when we feel like we're just about to explode. It's a tricky fine line. It's finding the balance and the rhythm. And again, it's taken us about 6 months to figure that out as well. The other brutal thing I've learned is that anxiety can actually trigger a vertigo attack for me. It can either trigger attack for me, or it can make a attack that I'm in worse. If you haven't seen my vlog, The Panic Filter, that is me right after an attack, and I talk about my experience, about how in the middle of the attack, my dwelling on the attack and just literally made it physically more brutal. I mean, there's a reason why doctors say you have to watch your stress with this. So the other day, I was having severe anxiety over something else, and I just kept grinding on it in my brain. And I could feel like I started to panic about it, and everything started spinning. Like, I literally made an attack happen because of my anxiety. I've also learned if an attack happens and I'm, it's beyond my control. It's just sometimes there is no trigger. It just happens. And when that does happen, I've caught myself, if I freak out about it and go, oh no, it's happening. If I do that, it's 100% going to happen. Full tilt, full spins. This morning, I started to feel it. Like, I know my eyes do this weird thing and my head does this weird thing. And I didn't freak out. I just almost kind of ignored it and just, took a few deep breaths, and I just kind of kept going. And it actually kind of backed it off. Now, I'm not saying that's going to work for you. I'm not saying you can control your attacks. I mean, I can't control mine all the time. All I'm saying is what I have figured out is anxiety makes the attacks either happen or worse for me. Next big thing I've learned is brain fog prep. Let me explain. After I have an attack, I know my brain is going to be a bit foggy for a couple hours afterwards. And so I have learned, well, here are the two things I don't do. I don't just sit on the couch. Again, if I just sit on the couch during brain fog, I'm highly aware of how incapacitating this disease is, and my depression gets worse. Now, the other thing I can't do is I can't full tilt try to do something that requires high cognitive function. I'm not going to sit down and try to plan out a lesson for my classes or something like that that's going to require cognitive high cognitive function. That's setting myself up for failure. So I try to do something in the middle. I have some sort of administrative task ready to go for brain fog. It might be something as simple as cleaning off my desktop on my computer or throwing away old emails that are already in my trash can. I don't know, maybe it's folding your laundry, but give yourself something to do that you can do so that you don't feel utterly useless, but you also don't feel like you are setting yourself up for failure trying to, write a paper or do something crazy that you're just not capable of at the moment. I've just learned to have something to do so I don't feel frustrated and overwhelmed, and also just something to do so I don't feel totally helpless. Don't try to do your taxes, right? And just don't try to do something that requires a lot of thought or calculating or brain power. The next one nobody wants to hear, but it's true. For me, sleep and stability of schedule and exercise really help me. My doctor mentioned it early on that having a consistent schedule, so waking up at the same time, going to bed at the same time every day really helps. I don't know why, but it helps. I guess it just keeps your physical system on a certain schedule and it likes that. I don't know. So I pretty much have the same exact schedule every day, whether it's a weekday or a weekend. I get up at the same time. I go to the bed at the same time. I have kind of the same wind down system at night that I do. I go to bed earlier so that if I have trouble sleeping, I still get enough sleep. And yeah, I know, nobody likes the E word. I don't like the E word. I don't understand people who like the E word. If you do, I want to teach me your ways. All I know is when I exercise, I feel better physically. I feel better mentally. Now, it's taken me about 6 months. We have a stationary bike, and I have been 60% scared to get on that bike and 40% honestly just procrastinating because I don't want to exercise. I've been afraid to get on it because I'm afraid that I'll have an attack. Try to get off the bike and fall is what I've been afraid of. So I just, I made sure it was a morning where my head was feeling pretty okay, and I had my cane right next to me to get off the bike, and I had a bucket nearby, and someone was home. My husband was home, and I tried it, and I did fine. I was a little nauseous afterwards, and I stretching kind of made my head feel weird, being in different positions, but I did okay. So it's only been a week, but I've been doing it, every other day, and I'm telling you, I can tell the difference. I know I have this thing that's already caused me to be pretty sedentary and be pretty kind of housebound. And I just know, I have to do something. I am bound and determined to not be one of these people that is housebound and ends up being even more unhealthy because of that. And I could, right? I have the justification. I have this terrible thing, and absolutely, if I need to sit on the couch every day for the rest of my life, I could. But I'm not going to let myself do it. So, again, I've had a good week here with exercise. Let's see what happens next week, but I'm holding myself accountable. I'm trying because I know how much it helps me. Next thing I have learned is to laugh. Early on, when I was having vertigo attacks, I just started listening to stand-up comedy a lot. I will sometimes listen to it just if I'm in the middle of a vertigo attack. I just am there, I'm streaming it, laying on the floor to my hearing aids, just to have something to, just to keep myself on the lighter side of what is currently happening. Another thing that I do to laugh, and this is going to sound silly, but I am always watching, little funny videos, or honestly, I'm a sucker for cat videos. Last night, I was kind of having a blue moment, and I was crying, and just got my little cat videos out and was watching reels of cats doing silly and cute things, and it helped. So do what you can to give yourself opportunities to laugh. This is a serious, dark thing that we have to face, and so any moment we can have to just have a moment to just laugh and feel that physical release of some sort of happiness or some sort of joy is physically good for us, and good for us mentally and emotionally and all those things. Last bit of parting advice, just again, give yourself grace. There are days when I really kick myself for not doing this the right way. And that, even saying that is, is ridiculous. There's no right way to do it. I mean, I have learned that I have to celebrate just if I have another day where I got out of bed and I tried to live life in a way that I'm trying to help other people. I'm loving the people that are in my immediate vicinity. I'm trying to be a caring, compassionate person, and that includes being compassionate with myself. There are many days where I'm like, okay, I succeeded at living today. I've had to reset the bar for what success means for me, and that's really hard. I'm like an independent, performative, high-achieving person. The other day I was reading a story. I'm like, oh, Taylor Swift is a billionaire. Great. I went to the store today by myself. I mean, but seriously, like, give yourself grace. Reset your bar for success. It's going to have to be different. It's going to look different. And if you got out of bed today, high five yourself. Bottom line, if you need help, please get help. Please reach out. Please don't isolate and further retreat into darkness. It feels like the safe thing to do with this disease, but we have to be careful with that. If you don't find ways to bring light into your life and connection and community into your life with other things and other people, this thing that we have, it's going to feel worse. So wherever you are today, open up the windows, let a little bit of light in to your life, let a bit of light in to your heart, and just know that it's going to be okay. As my husband tells me all the time, even if it's not okay, it's going to be okay.